Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Reefs Go Live. My name is Balt. I'm your topside host today for our special World Oceans Day episode. Now, in our previous episodes, we've been exploring coral reefs as living ecosystems. Today, we're going to take a step back and look at the connections between reefs and people. And for those of you who have access to the chat today, we want to hear from all of you. So if you send in questions or comments or answers to our questions as we go, our production team will send those to me and we can answer them as we go. So to start off, let us know in the chat why you think coral reefs are important to people. And we'll look over your answers shortly. Now first, let's say hi to our topside crew here with me on the boat.
Hello.
And let's also say hi to our underwater crew. I don't think you can hear them yet, but you can see them there on camera. All the crew we have together with us today. And let's say hello to some of our viewers. Let me check in the chat here. Hello to everyone joining from Kamana Bay Cinema and everyone joining on Compass TV. Great to have you all with us today. I've been asked to give a special shout out to a big fan, Dario, who's always been a big supporter of Reefs Go Live over the years. Hope you're watching today. Great to have you all with us. Tell you what, let's head underwater and say hello to our underwater host, Sabrina. Sabrina, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thanks, Balt. Hi, everyone. My name is Sabrina, and I'll be your live underwater host today for this episode of Reefs Go Live. I'm joining you from the beautiful Little Cayman here underwater, and it is stunning here today. The visibility is clear, and the reef is teeming with life. So today, we'll be looking at a reef during the daylight hours. And while it may seem peaceful at first, if you look closely, you can see that the reef is very active right now. You can see a number of different ways that fish may be using and interacting with the reef. They could be feeding, they could be hiding, they could be using it for protection. So let's make everyone reef detectives for a moment. Take a close look at the screen and see if there's any fish behavior that you can notice. Feel free to put this in the chat throughout the episode. If you notice any of your fish staying close to the coral, feeding, hiding, protecting themselves, feel free to note it. The reef today is full of life, and we have to remember that corals are alive too. As we talked about in our previous episodes, this is all part of a living system. And today, we're going to explore how that living system connects to humans too. So, Bolt, I think this is a good time to take a step back and look at how that connection first began.
Exactly. Now let's zoom out for a moment. The reef we're seeing today is part of a much longer story. Coral reefs can take hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years to form. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, corals are colonies of tiny living animals, actually related to jellyfish. And as they grow, underneath they form hard structures made of limestone, which is basically their version of a skeleton. And over time, these coral skeletons are built on top of each other to form reefs. And in some cases, if you give them enough time, they'll form entire islands like Little Cayman behind me. So when we look at a coral reef, we're not just looking at what's alive now. We're looking at a place with a very long history, and people are only a recent part of that history. So we've put together a short animation to show you exactly what we're talking about.
Coral reefs are among the oldest ecosystems on Earth. 540 million years ago, primitive corals began to form, long before plants or trees existed on land. These early reef builders extracted calcium carbonate from seawater to construct the planet's first massive underwater structures. Around 240 million years ago, alongside the appearance of the first dinosaurs, the ancient ancestors of modern stony corals evolved. During the peak of the last ice age, 20,000 years ago, global sea levels dropped drastically as water became locked away in massive continental ice sheets. As the ice melted, the oceans rose once more, flooding tropical coastlines. Within the last 10,000 years, these warm, shallow environments allowed our modern reefs to establish themselves and flourish. Over the centuries, as humans settled on coastlines worldwide, they formed a deep bond with these environments, relying on reefs for food, navigating sheltered lagoons, and using the coral structures as natural barriers against the open ocean. Today, our connection to the reef is more diverse than ever. Across the globe, these ecosystems are central to how we interact with the ocean, whether through local fisheries, vital marine research, or recreation like diving and snorkeling. Coral reefs remain at the very heart of our modern relationship with the sea.
So as you can see, reefs have always been more than just beautiful places underwater. They've shaped coastlines, supported communities, and become part of people's lives. And one connection we have to these reefs is through all the marine life they support, which in turn supports the fish and shellfish which many people rely on around the world. So, Sabrina, can you show us some ways in which those reefs support all that life?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Walt. A good way to keep exploring that connection is by looking at the reef structure itself. So as we talked about before, fish use the reef for a number of different ways, and one of these ways is for protection. So if you look closely, you can see a number of different holes and gaps and little ledges and all sorts of different structures within a coral reef that a fish can use to protect itself and hide. So often you'll see juveniles, which would be younger fish, or smaller fish species, all hiding in and within the coral. Juveniles or younger fish use this reef structure as a form of a nursery protection. So they grow here until they are bigger and stronger and can survive on their own. It's similar to how seagrass and mangroves offer the same sort of protection and nursery as we learned about in our last episode. And some of your smaller fish species will spend their entire lives living in and around coral reef systems. How this connects on a bigger scale is that when you lose these structure, when coral is damaged, you have fewer of your smaller fish species because they have less protection. And that means in turn that you have less food for some of your big fish species, such as your groupers and your snappers. And that means you could have less fish that are important for your local fisheries. So although sometimes it may seem small, it all connects. And what happens here underwater connects back to people on land.
Exactly. Thank you, Sabrina. And reefs also support people in a very physical way. For example, all those of us who live in the Cayman Islands. Ancient reefs built the land underneath us. Everything, our roads, our houses, our schools, are built on top of is ancient coral. And there would be no Cayman Islands without that coral. And the reefs today continue to build up and protect our coastlines. And the best way to see that in action and to see the real value of a reef is to look at what happens during a hurricane or any other big storm. And I watched this happen a few years ago at CCMI. We had a really big windstorm, came right out of the north, which was unusual. And CCMI, our building's right around the corner from me here. It's a couple of buildings, sits right on the beach. And about a few hundred feet off the coast, we have a fringe reef, a very shallow fringing reef that follows the coastline. And during that big windstorm, the sea level came up and the waves came in and just drove the seawater all the way under our building and all the way under our deck. But the really big, powerful, destructive waves were broken up along that shallow fringe reef. Saved us a lot of damage. If it hadn't been for that fringe reef, our entire campus would have been flooded out. So to me, that was a very powerful example of the value of coral reefs to our coastlines today. Now, let's take a moment here and go through some of your answers in the chat and some of your shout-outs and comments here. I have a couple of viewer shout-outs to catch up on. Denise Jenks from New York. Hi from Joanna Clark in Red Bay Primary, Year 4. Grade 6, CIS. my own parents back home in Maine. We have 6P and Mr. Peacock from St. Ignatius. Great to have you all with us. In terms of answering our previous question, why are reefs important to people? I do see an answer here from CIS Grade 6, who have correctly said reefs are important to people because they help stop erosion. Exactly. This gets back to the point I was just talking about. That if you have a fringe reef or a barrier reef off of the coastline, that will protect that coast and stop the wave action from eroding it back. Excellent answer. Let's see. We've covered some of the ways now in which people depend on coral reefs. But there are other connections as well. In the Cayman Islands, a lot of people visit just to go snorkeling and diving and to see these reefs firsthand. And one thing we like to do in these episodes is show you a side of the reef life that you may not get to see otherwise. And for example, today we're going to look at reefs at night. Not everyone has a chance to check out a coral reef at night, go night diving or night snorkeling, but it's a really amazing time to explore a coral reef. It's a totally different world. So a challenge for everyone watching who has access to the chat: what do you think changes on the reef after dark? What do you think you might see? So send your ideas in the chat, and meanwhile our coworker Anna is going to show us what a night dive here looks like.
Hello guys, tonight I'm coming to you from Grape Tree Bay. So obviously we filmed this a little bit before the live episodes come out, but I'm here with the exact same equipment as Sabrina has, which is this full face mask. So I'm going to be able to talk you through everything that we're about to go and see. We're going out at night because at night the reefs tend to get a little bit strange. So all of the animals that you guys would have seen with Sabrina during the day, they'll go to bed, and then everything else comes out at night to play. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to see some predators. We're going to be able to see some of the coral live and in action, and I'm really excited to take you guys along with me and see what we can find. Let's go!
And we're rolling. Welcome to the reefs at night. Let's go take a look and see what we can find. Come and look at this, guys. This over here is a beautiful basket star. If you see them during the day, they're curled up tight into a ball. But at night, these arms will unfurl. And I don't know if you can see all of these little bloodworms swimming around. They're attracted to the light. But the basket star is actually feeding on them, pulling them in with its tentacles. That's incredible. Alright, let's go see what else we can find. Guys, I don't know if you can see these fish that will just be darting past the camera over here. That one goes now. So these little guys are called blackjacks. They're nocturnal, they come out at night to hunt. And what they're doing right now is they're following us through the entire dive, using the lights on our camera and the lights we're carrying in order to see their prey and use it for their hunting. So you might see them a fair few more times as we go. Let's go see what else there is to check out. Come quick. There's a turtle over here. They don't actually tend to be awake at this kind of time of night. This is quite surprising. They'll usually be out sleeping. This looks to me like a green sea turtle. This is an amazing encounter. You really don't tend to see these guys out at night like this, just swimming around. I'm not sure what this one's doing out of bed at this time. And that is just an absolutely incredible encounter. A really gorgeous animal. This is super cool. So we have two things over here. first off, this really nice big king crab. He's come out in the night time to scavenge and find his food. And then over here, sorry Mr. Crab, over here, we have a whole load of basket stars chilling on this sponge. It looks like they are actually feeding on the sponge itself. So that's awesome. Two really nice invertebrate groups found together in the same place. Let's go see what else the reef has to offer tonight. Wow, okay guys. Here we have a Caribbean spiny lobster. This is a pretty special species for the Cayman Islands in general. Historically, they've been a pretty big source of food and have been really sought after by fishermen. Here in Little Cayman, they are incredibly well protected now, and there's a lot of laws prohibiting fishing them or going after them at all. They get huge as well, so this one, you can see between my arms, is probably at least like a foot in length. Alright guys, that's all we have time for in this segment. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey.
Thanks to Anna for that. What a great night dive. We all here love night diving. There's so much you get to see that never shows up in the day. And we're going to take a look now and see what answers you all put in the chat. I'm seeing an answer from Footsteps. You'd see bioluminescence at night. Exactly correct. Tiny microscopic plankton that glow in the dark. Various animals change during the nighttime. That's from Joanna Clark. Yep, absolutely correct. Some go into hiding, some come right out. From Edna Moyle Primary, most fish go around the reef to feed. That's true. You see a lot of fish feeding at night, like those blackjacks you saw on Anna's video. Nocturnal animals come out bioluminescence. Parrotfish will be sleeping in the sleeping bag. Yep, exactly. That's from CIS grade 6. Parrotfish like to tuck themselves into a little corner of the reef and make a little cocoon around them. Coral polyps will come out too. Exactly. Like we said, coral polyps are living animals. They're related to jellyfish and sea anemones. They have little tentacles that you'll see extend at night to catch plankton. Red Bay Primary. Torre says during the day many fish are swimming around and looking for food. At night some of these go to sleep and others come out. Exactly right, as we've been saying. You might see lobsters, octopus, crabs, tiny glowing creatures that make the water sparkle. All of that is absolutely correct. My favorite of those are octopus. That's really the reason I go night diving. I love seeing them walking around. Sabrina, do you have any night diving experiences you'd like to share while we're talking about it?
Oh, I love night diving. It's one of my favorite experiences underwater. The whole reef just comes to life in another way. My favorite times night diving have been when we're looking for coral spawning. So that's a whole different process in itself. But if you're interested, you can look up a video. It's an amazing experience, and it only happens a couple of times a year.
Thanks, Sabrina. So we've seen today that reefs support marine life and human life in a lot of different ways. And sometimes these reefs need support themselves to keep them healthy. So we need to ask, what can we give back? Sabrina, can you tell us more about reef protection and restoration?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. So yes, one approach is protection and another is restoration. So here at CCMI, scientists are working to protect and restore damaged reefs through the use of nurseries. So we put coral fragments onto nursery structures and later outplant them back onto the reef. This starts with small pieces of coral that we care for very carefully and look after until they grow to a size where they're able to be planted back onto the reef. But because corals grow so slowly, each individual fragment is so very important. At CCMI, the team has been working on this project for a number of different years now. And right now we're working on caring for the nursery and also expanding the nursery and maintaining data on the coral health of all the fragments at the nursery. So just this past March, we added 4 new frames to the nursery site, bringing the fragments from 118 to 293 fragments. And we're looking at doing more fragmenting later this year and looking at ways that we can increase the success of the nursery site. But of course, restoration isn't a quick fix, and it doesn't replace the need to address larger issues such as warming seas, pollution, and disease. But when restoration is combined with larger conservation efforts, it can help to support reef recovery.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, that's excellent. I'm going to take just a moment here and we can go through a couple of the questions I'm seeing in the chat. Here's a question for Sabrina. What part of the reef are you on now? Denise, who sends the question, just left there on Wednesday. I believe she was visiting Little Cayman, and the reef looked great. Do you want to talk about the part of the reef you're on?
Yeah, for sure. So we're currently on Bloody Bay Wall. We're at Jackson's Reef. It's actually not far from CCMI, so it was an easy trip over for us. And we're not far from shore, but it's a beautiful sight, as you can see here. You have lots of these sand valleys, and then lots and lots of reef structure. We often see all sorts of things passing through here. We were looking earlier, we saw some grouper, some snapper, some barjack swimming around. So keep an eye out. Hopefully you can catch something.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, Jackson's Reef is one of my favorite dive sites here. It's great snorkeling as well. Ivy from St. Ignatius asks an excellent question. What type of sharks are on Little Cayman? Sabrina, do you want to talk about that? And I can add a few comments in the end.
For sure. Most commonly, we see nurse sharks and Caribbean reef sharks. Actually, on most of my dives in Little Cayman, I'm lucky enough to see Caribbean reef sharks. But I know recently there have been some hammerhead shark sightings, which is very, very exciting. I don't know if you have more to add, Balt.
I've encountered the hammerheads a few times, basically at this exact site. I always love seeing them. People think of sharks as being these scary animals, and they are powerful animals and they deserve respect, but they're also beautiful creatures. I was doing a night dive close to here not long ago, I think a month or two ago, and as I was getting into the water, there was a big hammerhead right in front of me. And it was just minding its business, wasn't posing any threat. And I was sad I couldn't get a video of it as it was swimming away. We also see lemon sharks. We have a little baby lemon shark that lives right in front of CCMI. Sometimes I see him just cruising up and down through the seagrass. There have been people who see whale sharks off the coast here. But they don't really come into the reefs. They're just sort of traveling past. That's the world's biggest fish. But they actually eat plankton and small fish. They're what they call a filter feeder. So they're absolutely no threat to humans. There are other sharks that show up, but you don't really see them unless you go way deep down Bloody Bay Wall. If you're interested, you can look into some of the work the Department of Environment has done doing deep surveys of marine life off of the walls here. They find some other shark species. Occasionally there may be a black tip or very rarely a tiger shark. But really most of what we see is lemon sharks, Caribbean reef, and nurse. And now with the occasional hammerhead. Excellent question. Sharks are one of the reasons I live here. I love seeing them around these reefs. So those are some excellent questions. We have a few more questions here. A question from Callum. Why, when there is storm surge, do the waves not go over the rocks? Excellent question. And sometimes they do go over the rocks. What happens is when you have a big wave rolling in, from out in the open ocean, it's carrying a lot of energy. And when it hits very shallow water, it breaks, and that dissipates the energy. And right where it breaks, anything in the way gets knocked over. So that's the value of the reefs we were talking about earlier. They absorb that energy and prevent the waves from breaking in a damaging way on the shore. Sam asks, are the types of coral in Little Cayman different to Grand Cayman? In general, I'd say it's the same species, but you may see more of certain corals over here than you do in Grand Cayman. Sabrina, do you have any comments on that?
That's right. I think there are about 42, 43 species, but pretty similar to elsewhere in the Caribbean. But there's pretty healthy coral over here in Little Cayman. And some of your more vulnerable species that you don't see as much of over in Grand Cayman, we definitely see a bit more of them over here.
Yeah. One advantage of Little Cayman is that a lot of the reef is in marine protected area, which I'll talk about in a minute. So there's not a lot of human disturbance on Little Cayman compared to other places in the Caribbean, and that's one of the reasons we've had certain corals persist here that maybe you don't see as much elsewhere. An excellent question. Liam asks, how far down did Anna dive to see the animals on that night dive? She would have been, I think, about 60 feet. Would have been at the top of the wall here in Jackson's Bight. We have a question, does water erode the reef? It can. That's an excellent question. When we have a fringe reef, like what I'm talking about, when that's breaking up wave action, yes, the reef can get eroded, and that's why it's important that we protect the coral that are building those reefs back, because it's a natural cycle of erosion and rebuilding. Jonah asks, what is the biggest type of fish you see in Little Cayman? Well, technically, because there was a whale shark off the coast, that's the answer. Somebody saw a juvenile Goliath grouper not too long ago, and when they grow up, they are really big, about 7 feet long, I believe. All great questions. Sir John A. Cumber Primary asks, is there any difference to the reef over the years? Yes, there is, and this is a big part of the work that CCMI does is documenting the changes to the reefs over the years. Some years you'll have a decline in the amount of coral, an increase in the number of fish, or the other way around, and we document that in a program called AGRA. It stands for Atlantic Gulf Rapid Reef Assessment. It's kind of a fancy term. Basically, our researchers are going around and surveying the coral, counting fish, and making estimates of exactly what that question is asking. So if you're interested in that, CCMI has publications over the years that show how the coral and the fish change over time. Aria asks, what is the most predatory fish in Little Different, not including sharks? We have various predatory fish here in Little Cayman. They're an important part of the ecosystem. Sabrina, do you want to talk about I think you had a barracuda down there a minute ago. Do you want to talk about some predatory fish you see here on the reef?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, that's a great moment, Paul. Thank you. I don't know if you can see it here, but we've got a Nassau grouper. Can you see it in your frame?
Oh yeah, it's hiding under the ledge there.
Yeah, a little one there. Groupers are predators on the reef. They're actually ambush predators. They sit and they conserve their energy until they decide it's worthwhile to go after a prey. I'm not sure what this one's doing. Sometimes you can find them around the reef being cleaned. This one looks like it's just hanging out, so hopefully it'll join us for a little while.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. I see some other good questions in the chat here I'm going to return to in a few minutes. Since we did have that Nassau grouper, let me take a moment now to talk about Nassau groupers, actually. Sabrina talked about reef restoration, which is an important part of the story, because there are ways in which people may damage reefs and the life that depends on them, but we can also help protect and restore them. And that reef restoration works best when the entire ecosystem is protected. And this is why marine protected areas, which I just mentioned, are so important. And so here in Little Cayman, one important example is that Nassau grouper, and particularly what are called spawning sites for those grouper. You see a lot of Nassau groupers around Little Cayman, but there are many places in the Caribbean where they're really hard to find. The reason for that is that in order for Nassau groupers to have babies, they gather in the same special area once a year to reproduce. And these areas are called spawning sites. And when the groupers gather there, there's so many all in one place, it's easy to go fishing and catch a huge number of grouper all at one time with very little effort. And in some places around the Caribbean, so many grouper were caught at these spawning sites that eventually they just disappeared. But in Little Cayman, the groupers are now protected by law when they gather at those sites. In Little Cayman, it's the west end of the island every year, usually the first full moon of the year. There are a few other sites around the Caribbean, I think one in Belize, where they still gather to spawn, but there's very few left. So that's why it's been so important in Little Cayman to protect that particular spawning site. Because we're not just protecting one fish, we're allowing the entire population to recover. So we can see that reef protection is not just one action. It has to be a lot of things working together. It has to be coral restoration, habitat protection, supporting these fish populations, which people depend on for their livelihoods and food. And we have to reduce harm to the reef, both to support the marine life and all the people who depend on it. So Sabrina, can you tell us what people watching today can do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of ways that people can help, Walt. We got a little bit distracted by the grouper again, because it's just putting on such a show for us and not minding our presence here. But yes, there are a lot of ways that people can help, and some of it starts here underwater. So if you are a snorkeler or a diver, make sure that you're being really careful when you're interacting with the ocean environment. You're being respectful of the marine life. You're not touching coral. You're not standing on the reef. And you're following the local marine park rules. Even a small kick from a fin can damage a coral that's taken years and years to grow. And then your actions above land matter as well, just as much. So there are little actions you can take. There should be a list up on the screen for you. But you can reduce your consumption of single-use plastics. You can try and dispose of all your waste properly and reduce pollution that's entering the water system. And also, you can start looking at your seafood choices and trying to choose sustainable options where possible. And also, our larger actions, it's part of the bigger picture as well. So, coral reefs are really impacted by warming temperatures. So any action against climate change goes a long way in terms of reef protection. Thanks, Walt.
Thanks, Sabrina. I'm going to pause again and go back to some of our questions in the chat here. There's a question. Sabrina appears to be swimming between two rocks. Are these rocks huge buildups of coral? Yes, exactly. And that pretty much is the definition of a reef. When we're talking about these reefs, we're talking about an aggregation over a long time of built-up coral growth. And the coral underneath, existed hundreds of thousands of years ago. And the living coral on top of them are just sort of the leading edge of that reef's growth. So that's an excellent question. Let's see. Red Bay Primary asks a very timely question. What happens when the coral turns white, and how long do corals take to grow? I'm going to take just a moment to answer this one because it's very important. What I think you're talking about is coral bleaching. A coral, as we said, is a living animal. It has little tentacles that can catch food out of the water. However, a lot of its energy comes from tiny single-celled plants, tiny algae, that are actually built into its tissue, like built into its body. And those algae are called zooxanthellae, which I can't spell at the moment. But those zooxanthellae are what provide the coral with a lot of its energy, and they provide it with its color. If you see a coral that's yellow or green or purple, those are differences in those algae. What happens when the water gets too hot, those algae become toxic to the coral. The coral pushes them out into the water, and now the coral is having a hard time because it lost its food source. So when you see a coral that's turned white because of the heat, or what we say is bleached, that's a coral that's still alive, but it's hurting. And it needs the water to cool down so it can take back in those algae and keep on growing. That's a really big issue facing today's reef, so I'm glad you brought that up. How long do corals take to grow? It depends on the species. Sabrina, do you want to talk about a little bit of the difference in coral growth rates between the different species of coral? I'm happy to answer as well.
Yeah, sure, Walt. Yeah, again, it depends on the different species, depends on the conditions, but they grow at a maximum of a couple centimeters a year. So if you can imagine this huge reef structures, some of the huge coral species that you're seeing, they've taken thousands of years to grow. And what you're seeing is the little layer of live tissue. But underneath all of that is calcium carbonate. And it's a buildup of the reef structure over years and years.
Thanks, Sabrina. Now, I see some more questions here, but I'm going to pause on those until I believe the end of our episode. We do have some good questions coming in. The point of World Oceans Day is to show how, as we've been saying, people and reefs are connected, and people and marine life are connected. And what we're trying to demonstrate is all the different ways in which people rely on these coral reefs in ways we may not always be able to see. So what we're going to do, I'm going to send it back down to Sabrina for a moment before we go back into questions. And we're going to take one last look around the reef, and then we're going to get into some of the reasons why people love the ocean. So Sabrina, before we head back up, do you want to take one last look around, see what else is down there with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Walt. We've had a second grouper coming around here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of activity that's gone on today. We've seen some barracuda, some blackjacks, some barjacks. We've got a snapper passing by here. And then even if we look closely at the reef structure, it's just teeming with life. It may not look like much always at first, but if you look closely, again you can see these interactions. Fish swimming in and amongst the coral. You can see lots of live coral. You can see sponges. You can see soft corals. It's just abundant in diversity. So I would really encourage you, next time you're in and around the ocean, just look closely. So today was our last episode of Reefs Go Live for the 2026 season. And we talked a bit about why coral reefs are so important. They're a home, they're a nursery, a barrier. They're something that we rely on, and something that people really care about. And we also learned about some of the ways that people are working to protect coral reefs so that we can preserve them into the future. Some of these ways, like coral nurseries, are through protected spawning sites. But on this World Ocean Day, let's celebrate reefs for everything that they give us. And let's pledge to protect them into the future, all together. And from all of us underwater here in Little Cayman, I'd like to say thank you very much, and I'll send you back up to Walt for a final goodbye.
Thank you, Sabrina. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go through the last of the questions I see in the chat. Sabrina, thanks again for being our underwater host today. Okay, I see a question here. How can people help with the changes seen on the reefs? Okay, so you saw the checklist there on the screen of things you can do to help support reef protection and conservation. That may have answered some of that. Here's a good question. What do you mean by turn off the lights when you leave a room, which was in the Reef Hero checklist? Does this pertain to night dives? And another question, how does saving electricity actually help coral? These are very important questions. A lot of the challenges that the reefs face now, like we were talking about when they get too hot and they bleach, a lot of those issues are caused by global problems, global climate change, global warming, things that are ultimately caused by humans, but you can't always see the connection easily. So a lot of what we can do to help be better environmental stewards overall, both for the marine life and life everywhere on the planet, is to reduce the amount of energy we use. Because every time we turn on a light, that electricity comes from somewhere. It comes from somewhere, some electrical generating station in this case, which is emitting often fossil fuels, or rather burning fossil fuels and emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. There's a lot of science behind this which takes some time to get into, but essentially the more electricity we use, the more pollution we add to the atmosphere, and certain kinds of that pollution trap heat in the atmosphere and trap heat on Earth's surface and contribute to that warming, which is what's giving a lot of these corals a hard time. So when we're talking about things like turning off lights, we're talking about reducing the amount of energy we use and reducing the amount we consume, which, even though it doesn't look like it has any impact on the reefs directly, has a huge impact on the reefs indirectly. So when we're talking about a lot of these steps we can take to reduce our impact on marine life, that's really where it's coming from. The issue of climate change and sort of the changes in these ecosystems is very important for particularly island communities like the Cayman Islands. And this is one of the reasons why CCMI does these Reefs Go Live broadcasts, and why we like to talk to all of you near World Oceans Day, is because the marine life we're talking about, as we've been saying, is vitally important for a nation like the Cayman Islands. It's important for the whole world, but it's right on our doorstep. Without these reefs, like I said, there would be no Cayman Island. There would be no Cayman Islands, there would be no Little Cayman, no Grand Cayman, no Brac. They're built out of coral. And the protection of these reefs into the modern era is what's going to keep these islands healthy and protect everyone living on them. So that's the reason why we make it a point to speak with all of you on World Oceans Day, and why we thank you for joining us. I see a question here, for two questions remaining. Let's see. How big can coral colonies get? Individual colonies can get huge. There are some in the Pacific Ocean that can grow like to the size of a car, or even bigger sometimes. Some of the colonies here we see are about the size of a sofa. I think that's the biggest one I've seen. Not too far from here, actually. So they can get really big. Question from John Gray High School. Since the islands were built on reefs, if the reefs were to get destroyed, would the island go with it too? The issue we're talking about gets into coastline erosion, which is something that was mentioned earlier. What happens if, we didn't have the coral that we have now, is that eventually it would be harder for people to build their houses right on the coastline. These islands will still be here. They're built up out of millions of years of coral growth, like I said. But the threats we face now are particularly around the coastlines, and this is why it's important to protect the reefs we have, is that a lot of people's houses are built right on the coast, a lot of roads, a lot of things we depend on, and that's really what we need to protect, and we need to understand how best to protect it, through protecting the reefs we have. I hope that answers your question. What I'm going to do here is we're going to end today's episode with something really special and end it on a positive note. Why people love the ocean. Like we said, this is World Ocean Day, and we asked people who we knew, people who were visiting CCMI and around the world, to finish the sentence, "I love the ocean because." It's a very simple sentence. So while you're watching live, you can send in your answer in the chat as well. And meanwhile, we're going to play back some of the answers we received.
The ocean connects us all. This World Ocean Day, we asked people from around the world to finish one simple sentence. I love the ocean because...
I love the ocean because the animals and the plants are really cool.
I love the ocean because I get to surf in it and play in it.
I love the ocean because it holds a lot of important things in our ecosystem.
I love the ocean because of the sea turtles.
I love the ocean because it's so calm from above. and so bustling with life below, and it's like a second home when I'm down there.
I love the ocean because it provides peacefulness and an escape from all the stress and chaos and everything that's going on in our daily lives.
I love the ocean because I like watching the coral and the fish move.
I like the ocean because of how much life it has in it. I really like how I can see everything.
I love the ocean because it's a place of joy and playfulness.
I love the ocean because it's blue, relaxing, and it's my favorite place to relax.
I love the ocean because it produces so much of the oxygen that we need to sustain life.
I like the ocean because it's like another home to me.
I love the ocean because it replenishes me.
I love the ocean because it's just really cool and fascinating to see everything in there, and it's also just really fun. The waves are just really fun with me and my family.
And I love the ocean because it's home to like all of my favorite animals, and it's really abundant and colorful.
I also like the ocean a lot because it creates like good ways for people to surf and have a good time in, and like it's just like being in the water feels good and like makes a positive impact on people.
Why do I love the ocean? Well, my reasons for such love is both simple as it is straightforward. Firstly, it provides over half of the oxygen that we breathe, as well as crucially absorbing over half of the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
We love the ocean because,
as a marine scientist, I've always been fascinated and loved the ocean. Its amazing wildlife, beautiful and mysterious habitats, powerful waves, and as the life support system of the planet.
And as a meteorologist, I've always been fascinated by the ocean because of its connections to and impacts on the atmosphere, from fueling hurricanes and storm surge to creating sea fog and feeding atmospheric rivers.
But maybe what we like the best is that on planet Earth,
it is a coupled system. The ocean and atmosphere work together, just like us.
My name is Sylvia Earle. Ever since a wave knocked me over as a child, I've spent thousands of hours under the sea. Living underwater, diving, using submersibles, more than 30 different kinds, to explore the ocean, to try to see who lives there and how their lives affect mine and people everywhere. We must protect the ocean, as if our lives depend on it, because they do.
Every voice, every story, one ocean. Together, our voices remind us why the ocean is worth protecting. Happy World Ocean Day.
Thanks to everyone who sent in their videos and their answers, and thanks especially to Dr. Earle and Mission Blue. Now, this is a great reminder that people care about the ocean for a lot of different reasons. And it shows that coral reefs in particular are places that people rely on. They're places people learn from and places that people love. So from all of us here in Little Cayman, thank you so much for joining us this series. Have a great World Ocean Day, and we will see you next season. Goodbye.